What's up? What's up, everyone? How's it going? This is the Conscious Chicano. Today is topic is debunking non-binary thinking. You just entered my YouTube. Read the description below if you want to send me a message. You want resources on these topics. I have Instagram links below. And also, I have a link to my Rumble account. So if you want to get deeper into uncensored information, click on my Rumble link below. And I also have a Twitter account. And I definitely share a lot of information, retweets, and everything. So, anyways, and if you want to join me in my discussion on video, come into my comment section and click on that link. I just posted the link there after the presentation, and just keep the dialogue civil, respectful, and add on to the conversation. And so, yeah, definitely, it's been a while since I've been on here. Been very busy. Um, so today's topic is debunking non-binary thinking, and as you guys know, I have a degree in philosophy, and in philosophy, the dominant thinking is the dominant approach to philosophy is analytic philosophy, and usually we're very rigorous when we analyze things, and we use logic, reason, and we're also scientific, especially when it comes to confirmation and empiricism. Empiricism is like kind of like confirming certain um, you know certain beliefs with reality in some sense. um, so let's get to this non-binary thinking. I actually stumbled across this a lot, when studying Eastern thought, Eastern philosophy, and I always had an issue with this kind of thinking, where it's like this type of thinking, they definitely want to see everything as one, everything is the same. Um, you'll see aspects of this, like kind of like in Taoism, or even sometimes Hinduism and other types of thinking, Buddhism, and um, and I just think that there's problems with this kind of thinking, and it's like, and it's like it's believing that everything is an illusion in some sense, right? And that everything is the same, or everything's one. Um, and you got even some of these people in the Mexicayo, you know, um, they push a lot of this Mayan stuff too, where I don't know how authentic it is, but they're saying it comes from the Mayans in Lakesh, like you are my other me, or something like that. Like, hold on, this thing is, my cam is going now. Let me click on this again. So I've been having issues with my live stream sometimes, and but anyways, they just turned off my virtual background. I like having Reyes Tijerina in there, but they just turned it off for some reason. Anyways, so back to that thinking, the way they perceive reality is like, oh, everything is blurred, right? Everything is one. It's kind of like this type of thinking. You even find it in pantheism, where everything is one, everything is like a reflection of, they're all the same thing. In Buddhism, they have this thing like everything is, either it's all the same thing. It's like a mirror, like reality is a bunch of mirrors, and it's all the same thing. And I just had a problem with this type of thinking. I didn't agree with this type of thing. I was like, okay, our perceptions. I get into epistemology, the theory of knowledge, empiricism, rationalism, different things like that. And as philosophers, we try to understand reality. And you'll find this type of thinking in amongst a lot of some philosophers who will say that everything is there's no permanence to reality. All categories are an illusion and this and that. And and this even goes to this whole non-binary LGBTQ type thinking too, where they're trying to blur the lines between male, what constitutes male, what constitutes female, and they're trying to confuse everyone to say that okay, they can't I define what a woman is. Anybody can be a woman these days. Same thing with the man. Anybody can be a man, or they have all these other categories that they make up, and they act as though anybody can be a hermaphrodite or non-gendered and stuff. It's just goes out of hand, and this is the result of that non-binary thinking. And I always thought that there's a problem with a lot of this stuff. And I came to believe that we should embrace binaryism, you know, and our perceptions, our logic, our mathematics is binary. I realized that even in logic, you have truth, something that's true and something that's false, right? In logic, you have this truth and false, you know, kind of like these tables when you learn logic, right? A proposition is either true or false, right? But you analyze it to see if it's true or false, right? And that's the way reality is right here. And it even goes into like even a lot of times these non-binary believers out here, they go into trying to claim that native philosophies were non-binary, and they believed in non-binary deities and everything. I've even analyzed all that as well, and I analyzed all that, and I found out that a lot of that stuff is false. um, I'm on YouTube. Anybody? I'm on YouTube. So, so the indigenous philosophies are not non-binary. The indigenous philosophies I found are very binary. Like for example, a lot of indigenous philosophies believe in duality, right? And the dualities depend on opposites, right? And some say, well, the opposites don't necessarily mean that they're antagonistic, right? That they complement each other. The way I understand duality in indigenous philosophies is that you have opposites, and they at times they may be complementary. They may balance each other and harmonize, but then sometimes there's opposites that don't necessarily you know um, harmonize in some sense, where they kind of they're antagonistic at times, they clash. But the key is that in indigenous philosophies we made distinctions. There's binaryism, right? There's two opposites. There's male, right? There's female. Our ancestors understood those distinctions between male and female, right? And that dualistic binary philosophy was embedded. You could find this in all of reality in some sense, and you'll find the positive and the negative, right? The male, the female, the hot, the cold, right? All of that, a lot of times complemented each other, harmonized, and sometimes it wouldn't necessarily always harmonize. It would somehow be more sporadic, spontaneous, maybe chaotic, but eventually the goal is to reality is to be in a balance in some sense, and eventually the chaos settles down and becomes harmonized, right? um so our indigenous philosophies, we believed in dualistic binaryism. If anybody wants to tell you that we didn't believe, that we believed in non-binaryism, that's not my understanding, because you have to have categories of opposites in order for them to harmonize, to be dualistic. That's a given. Otherwise, you're going to have, something that you're going to say everything's the same. And if everything's the same, then that means there's no opposites, right? So you obviously have to have categories of opposites. And this is the dualistic binaryism in a lot of indigenous philosophies out here, especially in Mexicayo. So, um, so like a lot of times people say, oh, Western thought is all, it's it's the dualism that's binary, right? They try to criticize and reject dualism, but Western thought is so vast, and like you have different philosophers, not all of them agree with each other, right? But dualism, you know, dualism is, it's not just Western, right? You'll find binary dualism in a lot of philosophies around the world. And I discovered that even amongst indigenous philosophies as well. And so we can't just reject everything because all the Westerners think the same way, right? No, indigenous philosophers also thought the same way as well, you know? And, uh, and so the problem what I have is with this non-binary thought is to claim that everything's the same, right? And those can, you can actually, like basically there's no categories, right? That it's a gray area. There's no, everything is fluid, right? Categories, identities are fluid, right? And I think there's a problem with that. And when you try to say it's like me, trying to, one day I just decided, hey, I'm gonna identify as something that's non-indigenous, right? Non-Chicano, right? I want to identify as a rock. And it would be absurd, to even say that that's true. And you analyze it with logic, science, perception, and obviously your statement is false, right? It's obvious that I'm not a rock, right? So I can't just go around and saying that I identify as anything anytime I want, right? And the reality is, through science, through logic, perception, is okay. I'm a man, right? And I'm biologically a man, right? But somehow you have these non-binary people out here who want to live in their little illusion, thinking that, oh, when you perceive something, it's all an illusion, it's not what it is, it's something else, and this and that. And I think there's a problem with that. And basically, even I think it was Rene Descartes, the philosopher, even dealt with that. He was challenging a lot of the Eastern thought of his time, even a lot of thinking that, oh, everything's an illusion, right? And he basically established that, you know, he says, I think, therefore I am. It's like, okay, if I look at that this ball of wax and I perceive it and I understand it in depth and everything, and he, it's like, you know, through observation, you know, reason, you know, I can understand that this is a ball of wax, right? And anybody who thinks otherwise, that, oh, it's just an illusion, it's not a ball of wax, is, you know, it's is basically not using reason, common sense, and you know, their perceptive understanding, right? So it's important that we have categories. You know, people are into, oh no, we can't have labels and categories. No, we need categories. You know, especially for male and female, we need the category for to identify someone as a male. Okay, hold on. There goes my. We need we need categories to identify somebody as a male. We need categories to identify someone as a female. Otherwise, we're gonna be confused. We're not gonna. We're not in tune with reality, and there's obviously differences. And this is what I discovered, that reason, even Descartes talked about things. Like, he talked about reason, how it can give us clear, you know, precision in some sense, or distinctions. Making distinctions is very is important for our understanding of reality and stuff. Clear and distinctly, right? Um, Understanding. And so, you know, when we see distinctions, see, the non-binary thinking doesn't want to see distinctions in reality, right? And when you don't see distinctions in reality, then you're blinded to think everything's the same. And the, you know, the implications of that thinking is absurd, right? Like, for example, if you have, if you don't make distinctions, then you're gonna say good is evil and evil's good, right? You're gonna say, you know, you're gonna say that there's no distinction between, say, a white supremacist and someone who believes in justice. They're the same thing, right? You're gonna, you know, so there's problems with this kind of thinking where you do not make distinctions, right? And it's important to make distinctions, even when it comes to a biological male and biological female, right? Obviously, there's distinctions between the male and the female, right? The male has, you know, he has his genitals, right? He has sperm, right? He you know, he has a certain biochemistry, right? You know, and the female, the female has something that the male doesn't have. The female has, you know, obviously breast milk to feed her children, to nourish her children. She has a womb, she can bear children, right? She has eggs, right, that could be fertilized, right? There's obvious distinctions between male and female, even the biochemistry of them, right? So we need to acknowledge that distinction. And if we don't acknowledge that distinction, we're living in absurdity, right? Now, people try to use the argument, oh, what about hermaphrodites? Well, hermaphrodism is very rare, and it's a defect. And usually you have one organ that dominates the other, so they have it surgically removed, right? But in most cases, you're either male or you're either female, and there's no gray lines, there's no blurred lines, and that's the way the creator made it. And I like to mention even the creator, even the indigenous philosophies right here, you know. Um, in indigenous philosophies, our ancestors believed in, you know, binary dualism. they saw the distinction between male and female, right? And a lot of times they try to these non-binary Chicanx or Latinx people try to try to use revisionism on our history and our culture and try to say, oh, look at those those deities, they're hermaphrodites or they're non-binary and this and that. No, when you see like certain statues that are at times male or female, it's not pushing down binaries. It's actually showing there is a binary, and the binary is complements. It's like a balance between male and female. That's what they believed. It wasn't like a non-binary identity or embodiment. So there's problems with these revisionists out here, and matter of fact, our indigenous ancestors, if you're Chicano or Mexican, the a lot of these Chicanx and Latinx people try to say that, oh, we were all two spirit. Our ancestors believed in all that two spirit stuff and everything. Um, and matter of fact, indigenous people, there was many who didn't they weren't they didn't agree with that whole belief system. Matter of fact, the Mexicas were not down with any of that stuff, and they were very conservative when it came to the whole gay lifestyle and everything. They even believed that it caused sickness and illness there in the liver, which is interesting. And sometimes we see so many people in the LGBTQ communities having liver problems, liver diseases, so our ancestors knew something about that lifestyle was not even healthy for us. And the Mexicas definitely had laws that and I'm not promoting this, but this is how what they believed, right? Like just like many other civilizations around the world, they saw that the whole non-binary lifestyle led to the decline of their civilization, and so the Mexicas, they did not allow that whole non-binary lifestyle, and they even believed that it caused sickness and illness, right? And the Mexicas are not the only ones. The Miches of what is it called? I think it's like South Mexico around there, around the Oaxaca area. The Miches also believed the same thing, and they were very much opposed to the whole, gay lifestyle and everything. And also, my ancestors, a lot of the Chichimecas were against that as well. And matter of fact, was inspired by a famous philosopher, poet, and ruler named Nezahualcóyotl, and he was really against, um, the whole, gay lifestyle, and saw it as a deterioration of society, and he wasn't down with any of that stuff. So if anyone wants to say that our indigenous ancestors were all into that two spirit stuff, no, that wasn't universal, and not every tribe, not every nation believed in that, and even opposed it as well. And there was various views from different indigenous people. Some were very, harsh when it came to that, gay lifestyle. They were really opposed to it. And then there was others that were, didn't agree with it, but they didn't take extreme measures at times. They just didn't agree with it, and different tribes, different nations dealt with that whole issue differently, but not everyone agreed with that whole lifestyle. And some even try to say, well, the Mayans had, gay rituals and this and that. But if you read in the Chilam Bilam later on, they later regret it. They saw that during that Mayan, phase, that they were basically in decline of their civilization. So they weren't always into that whole gay lifestyle. So just go read the Chilam Bilam, and it talks about that. But like I said, you can't universalize and use revisionist history, or try to reinterpret our culture. And I see a lot of these Chicanx and Latinx so-called scholars who are very liberal. They try to reinterpret our history and our culture and try to push that whole non-binary agenda on our culture, when it wasn't universal amongst every nation, and not everyone agreed with that whole lifestyle. So let's just be clear with that right there. So, but going back to science, our science and logic and perception, the whole non-binary stuff is problematic, and it's important to think in terms of binaryism. This is how we understand reality. We make distinctions, right? We have categories, and it's important to have that. It's important to even identify people too. Like, for example, my identity, I identify as Chicano, right? It's important when I identify as Chicano, I'm not. It's like, okay, I'm not European, right? I'm not, anything else. I'm a Chicano, right? That category is it serves a purpose, right? That identity serves a purpose, right? But if I go on and start saying anybody can be Chicano, and this is where I have a problem with some of the Chicano studies people out here. They claim that anybody who lives in Los Angeles, or where there's a bunch of Chicanos, they could claim Chicano, and I don't agree with that. And that's the problem with this whole non-binary identity and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I've even heard some Chicanos saying that, oh, a white woman could claim to be Chicana if she's married to a Chicano, and I don't agree with that. I just see them, hey, you're Caucasian, you're European descent, you're not a Chicana, right? So and this is the problem with this whole non-binaryism. So we have this whole issue with the whole biological stuff, where if you ever get a chance, go watch a documentary, or go to my Rumble account and scroll down, and you'll see a really good documentary by Matt Walsh. It's called What Is a Woman? And he tackles this whole problem. He tackles it, and he basically, he challenges a lot of these LGBTQ people to define what is a woman, you know? And there's even a congresswoman who was challenged to define what is a woman, and they don't want to identify what is a woman, right? They don't want to identify what is a man, because if you're going to talk about if you're going to talk about what a woman is, but then you saying anybody can be a woman, so that then you have no grounds to even say anything is, it constitutes a woman, and this is the absurdity of their thinking and their logic, right? First of all, we have to have you know a category of what constitutes a woman, and there's a fine. I mean, if you actually think about what is a woman really, and you just make that distinction, right? Like I just mentioned earlier, a woman is a female. She has a certain chromosomes that a male doesn't have, right? She has a womb. She can she has breast milk to feed her children if she has children, right? She can bear children, right? There's obvious distinctions between a woman and a male, right? And so it's important to understand that, we need to make those distinctions between a male and a female. And there's obvious differences. But when you want to live in illusion, right? You want to act like everything's, oh, anything can be anything, or you can identify whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's just absurd. You're not living in reality, right? And this is what this whole non-binary movement is all about. They're trying to impose their reality on everybody, right? With all this propaganda, all this marketing everywhere, right? They're trying to push this non-binary thinking on the children, right? They're trying to get these non-binary books in the libraries so the little kids can actually read all this stuff. And there's been some parents that actually have discovered that some of these books are very graphic, and they want to get these books out of that because they don't want their children, reading this kind of stuff, right? And then we have some of these teachers out here who are pushing this non-binary agenda on the children. And now we're having these bills now that they're trying to make into law, where they want to take the rights away from the parents. And if the kids, are somehow indoctrinated, say by their teacher behind the parents' back, or they see propaganda in the library from these books and all that, somehow they're indoctrinated with this non-binary thinking, and now say a male now wants to identify as a female. Now these little bills are trying to make it into a law where if the male identifies as female, and somehow this person talks to an endocrinologist, a therapist, or something, and these therapists, basically have to go along by law to um, to encourage their transition, right? To encourage their, them identifying as the opposite of what they are, and then even could even lead to their encouraging them to get hormone blockers and surgery. And from testimonies and even studies about these hormone blockers, these are very unhealthy for people, even causing like cancer and all kinds of chronic disease, all kinds of problems. And there's even people who transition, who talk about that. And if you actually even see that documentary, What is a Woman, there's actually a person who transitioned and said they took all these hormone blockers, and now they're having all kinds of health issues and problems. So, and also these people prey on underage children, where they brainwash them, and they encourage them to take these hormone blockers, which disrupts their puberty as well and causes health issues. And then they get that surgery to remove their, their genitals and their breasts and this and that. And once they transition, they can never go back, right? And they can't reproduce. And there's actually someone who's a trans activist who came out and says that that as a kid, she got indoctrinated by social media to make her like think that she wasn't a woman, and to hate, men and stuff. It first started with feminism, and then it led her to that whole LGBTQ type of thinking. And then what happened is these therapists, as she was underage, basically brainwashed her and confirmed, what she was indoctrinated with, and even encouraged her, right away, got her into that hormone blocker, and that she saw an endocrinologist, and they did all this hormone blocking stuff, um, treatment, and then she got that surgery done. And now, as she's grown up and matured and even taking psychology and all that, she realized that she is a woman, and now she regrets everything she did. But now it's too late. That she wanted to have children, have a family. Now it's too late. Now she regrets it. Now she's suing. I think she's suing the therapists and everybody involved in preying on her when she was underage, and basically encouraging her to get those hormone blockers and that surgery. So she's suing now, and there's been another testimony. Some Mexican woman, um, she said that her daughter was a victim of the whole that LGBTQ agenda. And what happened is the same thing happened when she got indoctrinated and was persuaded to take these hormone blockers and that trans surgery. And they went and did that too. They actually took her kid away. The state did, because the mother didn't agree with it, and the state took her kid away and went and did those hormone blockers on that kid, and she went and got that surgical removal. She went in transition, and after that, she became very depressed, and that person went and committed suicide, and they're supposedly trying to say that having trans therapy and surgery actually, um, you know, reduces their depression. Actually, it did the opposite. And so this lady said that she lost her child, due to this indoctrination, and they preyed upon her, and the state came and took her kids away, because she didn't agree with that. So, and she was up right there, very emotional and crying about this stuff. And this is what you don't hear, all throughout the mainstream media or anything like that. You don't hear Chicanx and Latinx mentioning this, but this is happening in the brown communities, where brown children are being taken by the state, even when the parents, don't agree with that, with their indoctrination, and the state takes them away and goes and gives them this hormone treatment and this trans surgery. And this should be even criminal. The state should be charged for this kind of criminality, but they're introducing bills, and they're trying to make this law where, if the parent doesn't agree or affirm the indoctrinated child, then they can take the children away from you, and you are considered an abuser. And this is so backwards. This is the part of this statist tyranny that's going on in California. And a warning is that what goes on in California usually goes throughout the United States. So they're planning on pushing this agenda, and this agenda is leading to is targeting a lot of the brown communities. And I see a lot of the brown communities being indoctrinated with this whole agenda, and it's being widespread. They're doing story time. They're targeting brown children. They're doing drag story time and stuff like that, and they're targeting the brown children out here, and they're using the Chicano culture and the indigenous culture to try to push their whole LGBTQ agenda and everything. So they're targeting our population, and ultimately, it leads to dysfunction, chaos, even harm when it comes to your psychology and your health, and even sterilization and depopulation. This is a white supremacist agenda that's going on, and it's cloaking itself as though it's brown or it's indigenous and all that. It's just a sinister agenda. And if you come out and talk about this, they'll label you as homophobic, anti-trans, a bigot, hateful, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, you don't hate none of those people, right? But you don't agree with their agenda, you don't agree with their lifestyle and their beliefs, right? But they come around, and now if you speak out against this, they're trying to introduce, it, they're trying to hold on, I'm getting little pop-ups all of a sudden. They're trying to introduce, you know, they're they're trying to introduce hold on. Yeah, see, here we go. Game my cam. All of a sudden, right? So they're trying to introduce I guess initiatives, where they want to, disagree with any LGBTQ, beliefs and trans beliefs, they want to label it as hate speech and they want to criminalize it. And this is the problem out here. It's like you can't have your opinions, you can't express them anywhere, and they want to criminalize, your disagreements with that. And this is the whole agenda. This is the agenda to, and this is how you weaken society. You break it down, you confuse it, you cause chaos. And like I said, you go back to indigenous philosophies. The indigenous philosophy is like creator created male and female, right? And male female were meant to come together and procreate and to continue human civilization, right? Civilizations have been built on this reality, right? This truth. And to me, any diversion of that leads to chaos, dysfunction, disharmony, right? Uh, even depopulation, right? And so, and it's what happens is this is spreading, and they're targeting the youth. A lot of us older folks, old school folks, a lot of us are not down with this stuff, and they're trying to make it seem like, okay, oh, everyone, we like. They're trying to make the whole LGBTQ thing the norm, and it's not the norm, right? But they're trying to increase it. They're trying to multiply it, and they're coming out straight out all blatant now. They're having their whole parades now. They're over there, parading themselves naked in front of children. Um, you know, they're even coming out with chants that, oh, that they're coming for your kids. There's even an article that's in Congress. It was a LGBTQ person who wrote. They consider themselves a revolutionary, but if you read the article, their goal is to go after the children, to go after the youth, and all that, and and so they're trying to say that, okay, they're trying to say that, oh, you can't say all LGBTQ people are pedophiles, right? And that might be true, right? But they are after the youth, they're after the kids, right? And the statistics is there's a high rate of pedophiles that are LGBTQ. So, and they're pushing this agenda, and even some of the founders were into they were pro pedophilia, like, one of the main psychologists that they like to use for data and statistics and everything on sexual education, Kinsey, a psychologist, was promoting pedophilia, and he did pedophile research and everything, and he was part of that, and he's basically a criminal, right? And there's a lot of information exposing Kinsey of that, and there's even a documentary. If you go to my Rumble account and go click on it, look for it. It's about Kinsey, and he was a pedophile criminal. One of the founders of the gay revolution of the 60s and 70s was even wearing a jacket of, was it minor attracted, I think it was people or something. It was an organization. I think it's called MAPS or something like that. And he was wearing a jacket, and he was one of the founders of that gay movements back then. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to push that. They're trying to lead our civilization back to Greek and Roman times, where you had old men with little boys, and old women with little girls. You had this whole island of Lesbos. That's where the word lesbian comes from, and all that. they're trying to normalize all this stuff. That's eventually what they're trying to do. That's their agenda, you know. So we have to be aware of what's going on, and they're pushing this. They're doing this in a sneaky way, and they'll come off and say, "Oh, that's not our agenda," but then they're pushing a lot of this, LGBTQ stuff on a lot of people, indoctrinating them. And this is why now parents are opposing this. We have, parents in Glendale, North Hollywood, who said enough is enough. You're trying to indoctrinate, the kids into this whole lifestyle. And they say that, oh, we just want our kids to learn mathematics and ABCs and all that, but you're over there pushing your sexual lifestyle on the kids, and this is where they had the problem with that whole thing, so um and so you brown folks, you need to start waking up and start speaking out against this agenda. I see a lot of you comply with this. You think it's okay. You even say, "Oh, one of your family members is gay," right? And this is how they infiltrate you, right? If you have a close friend or family member that's gay or into this stuff, then and then this is like, okay, I can't hate them, right? This what goes in your mind. And I'm not promoting hatred, right? But they this is how they get you to compromise with their beliefs and agenda, where it's like, okay, you have a friend or family member, so therefore you should be open-minded and you should be tolerant towards that, right? And it's like, oh, but this community pushes, oh, love is love, right? You can love anything, right? No, you can't love everything, right? There's certain you got to have morals out here, right? And um and so, it's like, they act like they're very tolerant, but when it comes to people that don't believe in this non-binary stuff, or even like Christians, um, you know, they bash us, right? They make fun of us, right? They claim they're very tolerant, but yet they're in their parades, with a cross, and they're mocking Jesus, and doing all kinds of sexual, just disrespectful behavior and everything, or dressing up as transsexual nuns and stuff like that. So they claim they're tolerant, but yet they're doing all this kind of intolerant behavior, and people don't see the contradictions. They think it's okay, and this and that. And I even saw like a Chicano one time saying, "Oh, I think it's okay for them to disrespect the church because look at what the church did to the natives, and what look at what they have done. And, there's pedophiles in the church and all that." So here's a response to all that. It's true that the church did commit genocide, and did horrific acts towards indigenous people, but you can't label all Christians as that. There was many who stood up for indigenous people, who fought for indigenous rights, helped eliminate slavery and all that. So you can't label everyone as a genocider, or as a, you know, um, you can't label the whole church as evil and bad, right? There was just there was colonizers who were white supremacists, right? And I would even say that they weren't true followers of Christ. A true follower of Christ wouldn't enslave, murder, or rape, or anything like that, right? And yeah, and it's true that there's church members, like the priests and some pastors and leaders in the church who preyed on children. But it's 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 important to know that not every Christian is like that, right? And matter of fact, there was a friend of mine. I'm not Catholic, but he once told me that he found out that a lot of the LGBTQ community was trying to infiltrate the priesthood and trying to become priests in order to destroy the image of the church and demoralize it, and because the church was a biggest threat to the LGBTQ agenda, right? And it makes sense that this is what they wanted to do, you know. But like I said, you know, in the church, yeah, the church did, did have pedophiles and predators. It's important to be aware of that, and that this is where, as a Christian, I will acknowledge that happens in the church and it should be condemned, right? Uh, at the same time, though, the LGBTQ community doesn't want to acknowledge that there's predators in their communities, right? They want to just point at the church as being predatory, right? And dismiss all of Christianity as predatory, when in fact, you have a lot of predators in the whole LGBTQ community. And you see by the fact that they're targeting children, they're trying to push their sexual lifestyle on the children with their books in the libraries. They're trying to get teachers to be pushing this stuff on the children. You see them parading around naked in front of children, stuff like that. You see that evidence there. So, and a lot of times the priests who were molesting were homosexuals. Most of them have been homosexuals. So that's, but some will say, well, there's heterosexual predators too. Well, yeah, that there are, but a lot of times they're homosexual. They're gays, right? And nobody wants to acknowledge that reality, right? And you could accuse heterosexuals of everything. Oh yeah, they're criminals, this and that. But somehow, when you say the same thing, use the same standard on the LGBTQ agenda, I mean, community. Oh, they're don't talk about that. Okay, they're, that's there. It's like, oh, you can't be talking about them like that, right? There's double standards. I was talking to someone yesterday about that like a lot of times a male will he'll be right away criminalized, for sexual harassment, towards a female if he's heterosexual. But when you see an LGBTQ, like a gay man doing that to another gay man, or a gay man doing that to a heterosexual man, and you say that, oh, it's sexual harassment, they won't even take that seriously. It's like, oh, they just like laugh and all that. So there is double standards going on out here, and everything's upside down out here. So, but yeah, it's just we see this agenda that's going on out here, and they're pushing this everywhere, and that's why I'm not into this whole, I'm exposing this non-binary stuff, and a lot of people are afraid to do this right here, because they think, oh, they're going to be labeled as a bigot, as hateful, or they're not going to be able to get a job and this and that, and or just a lot of times people are just don't, they're always living in fear, and somebody was telling me, just by that fact that people are scared to speak out, that just tells you it's kind of like it's like a mafia, right? It's like, it's like, oh, you can't disagree with them, or else, or else they'll label you as such, or you won't be able to get a job, or or a lot of times, they end up having positions of power or being gatekeepers. So once they find out you don't agree with that agenda, oh, you can't be part of the club no more, right? You can't be part of their part of a you can't access certain resources, right? So that's what they do out here. It's just amazing with me, and the institutions are pushing this whole LGBTQ agenda, especially in Chicanx studies, Latinx studies. I actually had a friend of mine. He says that he actually withdrew from a graduate degree in Chicano studies because all they do is teach women, uh, feminism, to hate men, to hate their own family, hate their own fathers, and they're teaching men and women to be confused, to identify as the opposite, and not even to identify with their biological makeup. They're pushing this agenda. So he got upset and said, "Screw this, Chicano studies graduate degree. He went for a history graduate degree instead. So this is what they're doing. They're targeting our brown communities, and I was actually talking to a non-Chicano the other day, and he was saying, "Yeah, man, they're after your community, man. They want you guys to not even reproduce. They want you confused and sterilized and not even to reproduce. And so, yeah, they're targeting the youth. And a lot of the old school heads are more traditional, right? Traditional values about family. A lot of brown folks are like that. But now we have this younger generation, and their hopes is that the older people die off and the new ones replace them, and then now they can start pushing their whole LGBTQ agenda on the brown communities and worldwide and stuff like that. So, um, this is what's happening out here. You guys need to speak out. Teach your children the importance of hetero, raise them up into not being confused, right? Acknowledge, teach them true manhood, true womanhood, right? When they're mature enough to handle, as they when they barely turn adults and everything, if they want to learn about the birds and the bees and all that, this, you make sure you protect them, right, before these other predators come and indoctrinate them into that whole, and confuse them, right? And this is the problem with the broken homes in the brown community. You have someone who lacks a father, right? And so the child is raised by a mother, right? And I'm not saying all mothers are like that, but a lot of times, the male, it's very important to have a heterosexual positive man in the father, right? And what happens is like, if that's absent, a lot of times the kid grows up dysfunctional, and then that's when the the outsiders come in and try to influence or prey on your child, indoctrinate them, right? And so you got to protect your children, protect your children from indoctrination, and raise them up in the ways of the Lord, in the ways of Christ, right? And teach your children wisdom, right? And let them know about the snares of the evil one out here, and when they're mature enough to handle it, right? But yeah, it's just you got to watch out here, because they're pushing this. They're after your kids, and they're trying to take away the parents' rights, and it's just amazing, that what's going on out here. You're seeing it everywhere. So it's just a warning to you, brown folks. Start teaching your children, your family. Start talking about this. Combat this kind of thinking. You know, go to my Rumble account. Go show them Matt Walsh's "What is a Woman." Share this information. Spread the consciousness, as I say. Because we need to combat this. Indoctrination, and it's affecting our brown communities big time. It's being taught in Chicano studies. It's being influenced in popular culture. Um, you know, and that's what they're doing. And we got to combat this. And we got to promote conscious marketing, combat this indoctrination. And this is why I go on social media making videos and everything, because I don't see no Chicanos and Chicanas confronting this whole issue. I have to stick my neck out just to combat this whole you know problem out here, and I will keep speaking out about all this stuff, you know. And there's other brown folks who do agree with me. You know, sometimes they're not as vocal as me. You know, they're kind of like, you know, scared of repercussions and everything. Hopefully, they get more courage and come out and talk about this issue, you know, and expose it, you know. And it's an agenda. It's a white supremacist agenda, right? You know, it's a colonial agenda, right? You know, they want us to depopulate. They want to disrupt the family structure, the male female relationship, the duality, right? That exists between the male and female. They want to disrupt healthy male female relations. They want to even do the feminist movement actually works so hard for women to compete in sports, for women to, you know, to make breakthroughs in, you know, have a space, what's it, a safe space for women, right? But now they want to disrupt that, and they want to allow transgender, you know, males, who identify as females to participate in sports, and now they're beating all the women. And some of these women have trained so hard and, you know, for years, and they go and lose to a man who now identifies as a woman. So there, it's even backfiring on the, you know, the feminists too as well. So you feminists need to be aware of that this whole, you know, transgender movement too is a threat to you women as well. And you know, it's funny. It's like, you know, you talk against the patriarchy, but then like the trans patriarchy is actually still oppressing you. So it's just interesting. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of issues going on right here, you know. So just be aware of that, you know. I want you guys to start speaking out and opposing this stuff, and start creating groups, and you know, you know, in your local communities, and gather and start talking about this issue and educating our brown folks, and you know, and start exposing that, and start promoting healthy heterosexual, um, you know, heterosexuality, traditional family values, you know, start encouraging that amongst the our people, amongst the, you know, the youth, you know, healthy, normal male female relations, um, you know, it's just, you know, and there needs to be healing too between the male and the female as well, and dialogue, right? And that's what all duality is. This is what the indigenous philosophies were about, you know. um, so we need to promote that, you know, as they say, you know, promote straight pride, you know. And this is what civilizations were built on, you know. It's through the male female, and you know, and this is how humanity has existed, you know. And so definitely it's time to reject this whole non-binary thinking and embrace the binary reality out here, and start embracing the heterosexuality of humans, acknowledging that there's differences between male and female, and they were meant to harmonize with each other and to continue the existence of humanity, you know. Anyways, well, I guess I'm going to end it here. I don't have any guests here asking questions or anything, but I guess I'll end it here. And definitely, um, and if you see, if you want to get a hold of me, you want some resources on this. Oh, wait, let me talk about this. You ever get a chance, go to my Rumble account and go check out Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. And he actually used to promote therapy. He was a psychologist, and he was part of a group called NARTH, NARTH, and it would be him and a lot of therapists would and psychologists would psychiatrists too would use therapy to help people with the gay you know um, homosexuals and all that to to basically go back to their heterosexuality. And in that, there's a discussion by him how he debunks all the myths of the LGBTQ, how they promote a lot of lies and false information. One of them is the myth they say that, oh, once gay is always gay. That's not true. Some of the people that he actually helped with his therapy went back to being heterosexual and ended up marrying, say a man marry a woman and had children and remained that and perfectly stayed heterosexual. And he had many clients like that, and he says, yeah, and there's no science that people are born gay. There's no gay gene, not whatsoever. Um, and so he just debunks a lot of common. It's just using common sense. And he says that everyone's born heterosexual, you know, and um, and he just debunks a lot of myths that the LGBTQ promote. And he also exposes the APA, American Psychological Association, and he says that the APA at one time considered being gay, the whole LGBTQ stuff, like as being a mental problem. And then it was until later that they started getting PhDs in psychology who started infiltrating the APA, and they took that category off where they try to normalize being LGBTQ and didn't see it as a mental problem. But then Dr. Joseph Nicolosi says that the American Psychological Association disagreed with the American Psychiatric Association disagreed with the American Psychological Association and said no, it's a mental disease. And so now there's psychiatrists coming out, old school psychiatrists debunking these new psychiatrists and psychologists and saying no, it is a mental problem, and even exposing the whole trans movement, how it's harmful, it's psychologically harmful, and as well as harmful for your health. uh, and this doesn't get a lot of publicity, but there's videos on this stuff. And so a lot of the LGBTQ label this as, oh, that's conversion therapy. It's harmful for our community. They don't like that. But Dr. Joseph Nicolosi says, no, my clients, a lot of them want this therapy, and they end up becoming heterosexual again, returning back to their heterosexuality since they're born heterosexual, and they end up getting married and having children and having healthy life, and they're happy with that, right? So don't let these LGBTQ people give present you with misinformation, and they just love to use lies and myths and labels to get you to cave in to the ideology. That's what it is. Anyway, and he even wrote a book. You could get it on Amazon, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. Now he has a son who continues his work and everything. So definitely look into all that. So and this whole gay style is like, okay, the whole LGBTQ thing is both a mental problem as well as a spiritual problem. So from a Christian perspective, when they say two spirit, or definitely evil spirits definitely influence people, right? And could possibly possess people. So definitely there's a spiritual problem with this whole agenda, and it's basically Satan. Satan wants you to be the opposite of what God created you to be, and this is he wants you confused and confused and fooled and self-deceived, and um, to make you think that you were born that way. And and just not from a Christian perspective, but interesting. Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, who's a psychologist, he says that most of the time, the people who identify as that as LGBTQ, they've been victims themselves. They've been victims of molestation and rape. The majority of them, or there's a lack of positive male role models, such as a father in the family. So it's a broken person in some sense who've been traumatized. So it's not to hate them, but to understand them. So this is what he finds out in his clients, with his clients, that a lot of them have been traumatized, they've been broken and stuff like that. So he works with their trauma and gets them to, to heal in some sense, and they come back to their normal heterosexuality. So it's important not to hate anybody, to respect everybody, to be civil, right? But you don't have to agree with their lifestyle and ideology. But we also, as Christians, need to even understand them too, And a lot of times they've been victimized too as a child, and also, and understand that, people, at times they deal with the flesh and sin, and they may have been exposed to that kind of, you know, um, you know, sexual act and everything, and and maybe they create an addiction with that, and like the Bible says, the wages of sin leads to death, right? And that lifestyle does lead to death, and it's an unhealthy lifestyle, and um, but it's important to just deal with the LGBTQ community more in a humane way, and anybody can change, right? I've known people who changed, and now they're some of them are involved in detrans activism, some of them are former LGBTQ. I've seen women who were all butched out, right? Now they're all feminine, they embrace their femininity, they're not in self-hatred. They're very feminine, and they end up marrying a man and having children, having a family and all that. So anybody can turn, right? And so we have to be, uh, in a sense, not hateful, and be more understanding and loving. How would Christ deal, with this community? And he would definitely, um, you know, it would be showing them love, the agape kind of love, not the love of the world, not the love that they promote, but it's more of the godly love. So definitely, and sometimes, it's just like anybody else. They're lost, and they just need, to know about God and Christ and everything. But then you gotta be careful, because we do have these Christian liberals out here twisting the Bible around and trying to promote that LGBTQ agenda, and they try to argue, oh, since Jesus didn't say anything about it, then it must be okay. When in fact, Jesus promoted traditional marriage between male and female. So, um, and then Paul talks against that as well, and so does the Old Testament. But some of these liberal so-called scholars want to twist the Bible around and say it's okay, right? And I don't agree with that either. So just be aware of that. There's people out there who are calling themselves Christians, but they're promoting that whole LGBTQ agenda and everything. And to me, that's just that's a false doctrine right there, false interpretation of the Bible. Anyways, well, I guess I talked a lot here. So anyways, if you guys want to get a hold of me, go to my Instagram, click on my Instagram and send me a message. You want resources on this, you want some documentaries on this information and all that, I'll send you Matt Walsh's What is a Woman, or Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, or some other documentaries on this whole issue and books and everything. So definitely. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to my Rumble account, as well as my add me on Twitter. I'm always exposing a lot of other issues as well. Not just this one, but other ones as well. If you guys know what I'm saying, right? Anyways, well, this is the Conscious Chicano, and I'm out.